Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, my name is Lu Seng. So today I'm going to present to you one of the studies I did for my PhD, which is to compare between the US population and Singapore population about their perception towards online radicalization. So some brief information about myself. I'm a research analyst with the Ministry of Home Affairs for some time. And what I'm going to share with you today is influenced by my own experience as applied psychology in a security setting. I did quite a lot of research in this area. And more importantly, like I mentioned earlier, this is just study 5 of my entire PhD. The objective of today's sharing is to learn about what community members from two different countries think and know about online radicalization. So how is this useful? It is useful in a sense that we try to ask them their views on how they perceive certain indicators that were identified based on previous studies, the threat of online radicalization, and what they can actually do to counter online radicalization. So, value added part, there's a lack of resource or literature on this area of research. It allows law enforcement to get a situational understanding of what community members know about online radicalization, and last of which, it could potentially be used for policy making or formulating relevant countermeasures. I like this quote a lot. While authorities can do a lot, it is equally important to recognize that the community members are vital key partners. They are the ones who are uniquely positioned to see things with their family and friends and all. They will chance upon things that they see online when people exhibit radical content. So key messages has actually been put forth by many governments around the world where they emphasize the importance of the collaboration between government and the community. Because if there's a lack of knowledge or inaccurate information about what they should know about terrorism, it can lead to unnecessary or unwanted consequences like Islamophobia. Case in point, after the Norway attack in 2011, the newspaper was quick to run a story highlighting that it's Al Qaeda who's involved, but the real perpetrator is actually right wing extremist Andres Breivik. So the unwanted stereotypes against Muslims come to the forefront. Two outcomes. One, it could lead to unnecessary activation of law enforcement resources, which are actually very precious to investigate bias reporting. Or worse still, we could actually miss out on real things that terrorists are doing because we are looking at the wrong things all along. So that's why this study set out to understand this basic knowledge about community perception. What is actually wrong, what behaviors are acceptable and not acceptable in their eyes. So with all this knowledge, hopefully we can actually empower the community through things like SG Secure in Singapore, which is a movement that tries to empower and educate Singaporeans about what to look out for. So in terms of methodology, briefly, there are 3 segments: the demographic questions, a few questions about online radicalization, their awareness of it, and last of which, the most important part, it is the indicators of interest. This was based on a previous study done by me when I actually deciphered 42 indicators of interest. But in this case, we are getting the community members to rate their relevance for detecting radicalization in social media posts of these 42 indicators. How did they came about? They came through a modified Delphi approach plus a para-analysis from literature review, discussions with academics around the world, as well as some digital ethnography done by myself. In terms of the profile, it is a nicely segmented 160 packs from NTU as well as from Amazon MTurk. A majority of those from NTU are female. The inverse is real for the MTurk population. In terms of age range, the NTU population tend to be younger, whereas the MTurk population tend to be nicely spread across the different age ranges. So, key thing of interest. What are their ratings? The top 5. As you can see, there are certain commonalities across the two groups in terms of the top 5 indicators. They do point out that attempting to meet up while they are saying this online is a cause of concern, that they were picked out as signs, as well as praising their allegiance to terrorist group online. But I just want to draw your attention to one thing of interest. Remember I said earlier about actual study being done when I compare to real terrorist social media posts. It is actually this post itself done through logistical regression, which found that this is a key predictor. If someone were to do this online, they're likely going to travel or fight. So it seems like the sample does pick this out as a key thing of interest. But these are all just means. Are there any general patterns that we can actually see across the two sample of participants? So that's why we use factor analysis, and then a 4 structure was found for NTU, as correspondingly a 3 factor was found for the MTurk population. So just first of all bring you through the common factors of interest. First thing first, both groups emphasize a lot on involvement in terrorist online communities. I mean, the OR1 was seen in both. And so this relates to one very simple fact. They will look out for radicalizing individuals based on how these individuals may reach out to people. And the more important thing is these are things that are very easily observable, which is a good thing, as it could help us, the law authorities itself. Second common factor is that of protective factors. I mean, both of them have this, and this is nothing of interest because the literature do suggest protective factors as things that are important. But the interesting thing is this. Under the MTurk population itself, there seems to be some contradicting elements. 3 indicators that lie within these factors tend to nest within the themes of searching for purpose and significance. So I'm not sure how to read this, but because these are known to be risk factors as well. So there could be a need to subdivide this factor further for future research. There are 2 factors that are found to be unique to MTU population. First of them is the factor on weapons. It is a known thing to be a red flag if someone were to say they want to do an attack or preparing for something. The surprising fact was that this was not featured among the MTurk population, where access to weapons and training are easily available as compared to the Singapore population. Second NTU only factor is that of frustration. But I need to stress the word but because they were negatively loaded. It suggests that for the Singapore population, the radicalizing individuals may be perceived to be walking the talk rather than spending efforts publicizing their grievance. It could be related to how the legal system in Singapore works. I mean, our authorities have a very low threshold for radical stuff online. So they'll step in quite quickly, and that could account for this. But like I stressed earlier, I don't think this is the only answer. More research is needed as well. Now moving on to the MTurk population. I mean, they do exhibit factors that talk about intolerance towards others. So it's about depicting the outgroup negatively. I could only draw it to the more dehumanizing on hate speech in recent times in the US. So this could have caused the association between expression of intolerance with online radicalization. So what do all these results mean? Factor analysis. Both of them prioritize involvement in online communities, which is an important thing to look out for. So it could also mean that we, from authority angle, we need to educate them on what to look out for then. But then we also have a follow-up question on how regularly should we update the list. Because if we were to do it wrongly, it could lead to unnecessary spotlighting on certain segments, as well as message fatigue. In terms of differences, we went through several of them between the 2 samples. One reason could be that they're influenced by how they have perceived terrorism or online radicalization and developed certain preconceived notions about them. And it's also on this point we move on to the second part, their awareness on this topic. First of all, let's look at their views on the role of the internet. Both of them think the internet is a neutral thing when it comes to facilitating terrorism. This is in stark contrast to what the literature actually said. So could this be a potential lack of knowledge? Similarly, both groups do agree that it's easy for someone to become radicalized online, but the NTU population has a higher rating It could be a case that most of the cases in Singapore tend to be self-radicalized. What about their views on counter-narrative or countermeasures and things like that? Both of them think that the community plays an important role. So it does suggest that some of these nationwide campaigns do work. And they all also recognize their need to do something, that they need to report. And this is where we started asking the question of where to report. I mean, it was along the range of the neutral ratings. And then we asked the open-ended question of where they will report. 80% of them give the right answers, which is quite generic in nature: police, anti-terrorism, reporting platforms. But there's also a need to recognize that 19% of them don't know what to do or don't really care. So these are things we need to look out for. And then we ask them their willingness to do it. The NTU population seems to be more willing to report. And then we ask them what are things that may hold them back. And these are the top 5 factors. If we were to look closely at the top 2 itself, it seems that the cultural implication could play a role, because in a US setting, a more individualistic culture, they think more of the positive sense of self, so they could explain why there are more concerns about fear of reprisal as compared to NTU counterparts. In contrast, for collectivistic culture like Singapore, where we place more emphasis on social harmony, they fear more about ruining close relationship. So what are the key takeaways then? First thing first, we've been through how they view indicators as well as their level of awareness and their differences across these two populations. What we found also is that some of these indicators can be used as baseline as we compare it with a real life indicator that was proven, while one itself, but it also emphasized few things, that they look out for things of people getting involved online. So this leads back to the question raised earlier: how much awareness do we want to put in publicizing some of these things to look out for? And one limitation is that, granted, most of these are opinions, so they may not actually represent their real ability or what they really look out for. So future research could look into that. Next, just want to end off this presentation with some implication for law enforcement. First of all, the ratings itself do provide a basic understanding of what the community members know. So if we were to engage them, we can ask them the right questions. Second, in terms of policy and education-wise, there are certain things that we need to overcome, especially in overcoming barriers for reporting. In terms of research itself, these studies somehow serve as an evaluation piece where we somehow see the positive effect of some of this social movement by the government, like SG Secure movement, and it also serves as a foundation for future studies. So all in all, I just want to stress the fact that while authorities spend a lot of time trying to intervene and come up with a lot of measures, it's important not to neglect how community thinks about all these things. If you were to come up with the wrong interventions, the worst is that it could end up being counterproductive. So on that note itself, thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions that you may have.